Hi, Jenny, and welcome. So happy to see you. How are you today?
Oh, good. I just got back from a nice walk outside. But yeah, feeling a little tired, but excited to be here with you.
And tell me where you're calling from.
Yes, right now I am at my childhood house in Newark, Delaware, on the East
Nice,
Coast.
nice. What happens in Newark?
There's a lot of beautiful parks. So my dad and I have been exploring the parks around here. We've been eating some good food, but my mom's one of 10. So I've also been seeing like all of
Wow,
my aunts and uncles and a lot of good family time in Delaware.
wow, one of 10.
Yes, five girls, five boys.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's yeah, quite different from here. We've got the first sunshine, not too much over on the west coast. So really excited to connect with you today, Jenny. And so today is we'll probably be connecting for about 30, 40 minutes. It's a light touch coaching session, and it's all about connecting with yourself, actually. So, what I'd love to start with is what is your objective for today? What's or a couple of things that you'd really like to get out of our session today?
Yeah, I guess the first one that comes to mind is turning ideas into reality.
Right?
Um, I've been personally like I've been journaling a lot and coming up with a lot of ideas, but then kind of have a stuckness around how to make it a reality and
Right.
how to kind of what are the next steps. And I'm almost putting a lot of pressure on that.
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, how do I take a deep breath and kind of figure out what the next steps are without, you know,
Right.
succumbing to
Totally.
stuckness?
Why don't we? Because I asked for a couple, but why don't we start there? Because I
Okay.
think that's probably a challenge for most people. So, can you describe to me a recent example where you've been like, "Oh, this is such an amazing idea," or the feeling that you've had, and talk about both the desire, the feeling, and also the frustration. So, first of all, what's the feeling that you have when you're talking about a specific idea that you have that you want to bring to life? What happens?
Yeah, I'm usually pretty talkative and I feel a lot of like energy in my body. Like I'll start like I do feel a lot warmer. And my first thing that I usually want to do is write it down. And
Right?
so and there's a lot of excitement around it. So I'm like, okay, this is a great idea. I feel the excitement of it. I feel like kind of the rush from it. And then I get it down and then I get stuck on like the how. That's where I usually feel. It's like I have the initial like, okay, I feel like the idea is moving forward. It gets me really excited. I have a lot of hope in it. And then after I kind of like let it be for a second, then I'm like, oh, how is this gonna work?
Mm.
How am I gonna do this?
Yeah, that's really a really great start. Would I be right in saying that it's almost like overwhelming feeling?
Yes.
Yeah, so let's keep moving forwards on that. So you have this great idea, and then you've the idea is there, and then the frustration comes up or the overwhelm. So talk to me a little bit about what happens or not. So you've got this idea and you go to take action. What's happening for you then? Or even some of the questions that are coming up for you.
There's usually a lot of doubt. I'm like, oh, this hasn't been done before, or oh, um, like, can I do this by myself? Because that's definitely part of it too, is I'm like, oh, like, am I able to do this? There's a lot of like questioning. Um, and so when I get to that spot, it's like that's when like if I let the doubt overcome, then I'll kind of be stuck in it. But sometimes I'll talk to someone or I'll talk to someone that I trust and I'll be like, okay, this is the idea that I have. Like, what do you think?
Mm.
Or like, what, like, can I bounce it off of you? And when I'm like reverberating it back to someone else is when it's like almost like a test for me to put it together in a way that they understand. But what I'm coming to find is like not everyone, like you don't need to lay it out for someone to understand right away, but it kind of is just a step in the process to help me like
That's great.
solidify it.
Yeah, so what I heard there was, so there's a realization there, like you don't need to, this is what I heard anyway, there is a realization that you don't need to lay everything out.
Yeah.
So am I right in saying that there's a pressure on you to lay all the details out for other people?
Yes, and truthfully, it's kind of one of those things where I put that pressure on myself because I'm like, if this doesn't make sense to someone, then it probably sounds crazy or it probably sounds like unattainable. Um, and so in my mind, I'm like, oh, I need to have every step laid out, or like this person's not going to understand. And if they don't understand, it's not going to work. That's kind of like the cycle I almost get stuck in. Um,
Yeah, almost like you're kind of proving your value to them,
yeah.
sort of. Yeah, and you, it sounds to me, Jenny, like you already realize these things. What I would love to do is, if let's try and find a specific example. So have you've got to this stage in life, so are there examples where you've had that idea and it's come to life successfully?
Mm.
Can you think of any?
Yeah, the first one that actually comes to mind is one from high school. Um, and I got nominated to go to this conference for Special Olympics. And I wanted to bring what I learned at this national conference back to my state and have kind of a version of that conference in the state. And we were able to make it happen after a year. And what happened is like I had the idea, I knew the value of it, and I like felt the value of it. And I had people like with similar mindsets that were like, yeah, like we can make this happen. And then the next year we're able to put on that conference and do it a couple years in a row.
That's a
And
great,
it was just like a matter of like, oh yeah, of course, like this is something that like I see value in and can benefit in. And it wasn't my value, it was like the value in what I was creating.
hmm.
And then like even more recently, like a simple thing, like I didn't know I'm going to Kenya tomorrow. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this happen. And then one day I was just like, oh, like this can work. I can make it happen. And everything kind of fell into place because I kept saying like, this is a dream of mine to go and experience Kenya.
So tell me, Jenny, as you're reflecting, that was two examples you gave there. One was about the high school and the Special Olympics, and one is about going to Kenya. So in your mind, what made those things happen? There's a couple of things that you said, which I'll talk about later, but what do you think? What's the reason that both of those came to life?
It was like this point where I was like, oh, I'm the one limiting myself. I'm the one saying, oh, it's not possible. There's no one else actually saying it to me. And once I kind of make that connection, then I'm like, okay, let's realistically take a look. Like, is this possible? Maybe it's not possible now, but maybe in a year from now it's possible, and kind of just resetting the expectations, because there's definitely like a sense of I want to get everything, all my dreams to come true now. I want all my goals to come true now, and almost like that instant gratification of it. And so I would say like lack of patience.
There you go. That's great.
Lack of
So so it's much more than just patience, but there's a couple of things that one in particular that you said when you were talking about the Special Olympics
Mhm.
that I really picked up on, which is I felt the value.
Mm,
So that's the exact language that you used. What I heard, and you can, you can let's work on this. What I heard was it really resonates with what you want. So the Special Olympics, it just felt as if you felt the value internally and then it happened. Uh, was that the same for Kenya?
yeah, because inside, like exploration is and curiosity. It's like by doing that, it was like, oh, like I felt the value in going because
Yeah.
new experience had helped me grow.
Yeah. And it also sounds, the second thing that I picked up on was when it comes to life, you were creating space between you and your emotions. So there was even though there's the impatience gene or whatever comes up for you, I have that one too. But it sounds like you created some space between you and the decision to, so there was some reflection space. Is that true for you?
Yes,
Ah,
absolutely. And it usually takes like sometimes it takes a little time um to figure that out, but then I like when I do have that moment to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, what do I really like want here? Like, can I make it happen? What I'm looking at is like I'm not acknowledging my current state of where I'm at almost. Like I am looking at my current state and saying, oh, it's not possible from where I'm at right now. So it's not possible.
hmm,
Does that make sense?
totally makes sense. Yeah. No, I love, they're two great examples. And what I want to reflect back to you, Jenny, is they're two amazing examples that you made happen. And so there's a narrative in your mind that comes up with things that really matter to you that says, I can't do this. And
Mm,
so, you know, you're getting validation externally. You
mm,
know all of this intuitively, you already know it.
yeah.
But that's just in that very simple example, that's what I'm reflecting back. Would that be true? That when it comes to life, you're not needing the external validation?
Yeah. And where I get stuck is where I'm trying to like prove
Yeah.
that almost.
No, that's a really, so let's, so there are two examples that have happened. So let's is there something in your life today that you're like, you know, the same situation, you really want to bring it to life? So uh, the challenge that you had to mention was bringing a vision into reality, and what we've talked about is that you're perfectly able to do that. You have that within you already. You've done it many times, but there are times where you feel that stuckness.
Hmm.
Would that be right?
Yes.
Yes. So let's find an example today where you're feeling that kind of stuckness, a real life example, and let's work a bit on that. Do you have any specific things that you're working through or you're feeling stuck in?
Yeah, so it's kind of a big example, but it's the main one. But after I come back from Kenya, I'm trying to figure out like what's next. Like what is next? Right now, um, I don't have any permanent place where I'm staying when I don't have any like work set up either. And so, and when I keep looking at like what I want to do next, it's like a mix of, you know, like my like trying to figure out how my passions will align with what I want to do next and making sure that like there's flexibility and that like, you know, because I love traveling, I love sports, I love people, I love storytelling, I love um, just learning. And so I've had jobs where I felt that same stuckness. And now I'm like, okay, I know what I don't want, but then it's like trying to figure out what I want. It seems like it doesn't exist. And so trying to create that um, is hard.
Yeah, great. That's a great example and a very common example for many people.
Mhm.
So you can obviously see the big picture. It sounds like you're very good at the visioning and the big picture. And so if you break that down to between now and the next 2 months, very practically, what comes up for you when you think about like the next 90 days in your life? So we're bringing it right down to what are some of the things that you feel there's movement on?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've talked about is brain sports and kind of what
Mm,
that looks like. So that's something I feel that kind of like there's times when I'm talking to someone or I'm getting ideas and I feel it generating and it gets me really excited.
great.
And then I also feel the stuckness of it. I'm like, oh, my brain's crunching really hard right now on like the how.
Right.
Um,
Great. Great. So let's stick with this one, right? So you
okay.
talked about brain sports. It could be anything.
Mhm.
What happens in your body? So what are some of the things that come up for you as you feel energized by that next step? So that we're specifically talking about the next 90 days. What's happening? Can
So
just focus on the energizing stuff.
I'm usually able to like move around a lot. So like even when I had this idea or when I have the idea specifically for brain sports, like I was like I felt really energized, like I was moving my body a lot. I was like tasks that like usually would be like that felt heavy would like come easily and I would be able to do it quickly. And I didn't feel any heaviness in my body. I was just moving from one
Mhm.
like thing to the next without like feeling any tension in like right here, which is I know I'm thinking a lot when I have a lot of tension right here.
Right.
Um, and so and not putting pressure on what that next thing looks like, just trusting the movement that I'm in and like being present with whatever I'm doing at that moment.
That's great. It sounds to me that you're very aware of what's good for you in your body. So let's shift a little bit to, okay, now you've realized, oh, this could be really exciting. You've got that circulation going, you've got you're feeling positive about it. What happens to the stuckness? What happens between there and then the block? So just describe to me in as much detail as you can, like what happens between that and then the kind of the stuck feeling.
Um, it's usually when I'm not, I'm just kind of sitting with like almost sitting too much with myself. And I'm like trying to plan it out. Like it's the how. It's like, it's always the how. That's where I always get stuck because I'm like, it's too difficult. Like, I don't know what the next step is. So it's like when I'm like thinking, when everything goes up into my head and I'm like, okay, my brain's crunching right now. I'm trying to figure out the exact next steps. And I think, and for me, it ties to like, oh, does me cleaning up the dishes at home like really somehow going to lead to like the next 90 days of my dream coming true? Instead of like, and then I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and really make this work. I need to figure out every next step so that I can explain it to people. And it's like, it is the external validation. Usually when I'm seeking it from, excuse me, my light went off. Usually when I'm seeking it from someone outside of me, and I'm like bouncing off the idea with someone that might not understand where I'm coming from, that's when I feel the stuckness.
Oh, you're like,
One sec, I don't know what just happened.
ah,
There we go. Lights back on.
so let's go a bit deeper on the external validation. What happens if you have a scenario where people don't like your ideas?
I'm in that a lot now,
Right.
actually.
Let's
Because
go there. Let's go there. So talk me through what happens for you, because this is all in the same, just pulling it back a bit. We have to go deeper to understand what's the root cause of the stuckness.
um feeling misunderstood.
Right.
Um and so or like feeling like I feel like I've said my ideas to so many people sometimes. And sometimes I don't care. So people are like, you're crazy. I don't know if that's gonna work. And I'm like, I'm like, I hear you. And in my head, I'm like, I know it's gonna work. Like I'm gonna make it work.
Mhm.
But then it's usually with people that I really love and care about and trust in one sense. Um, and what I realize about it is like it's a lack of acceptance in me about where they're at. Like we're just different. And if something's new and different and seems strange or weird, like of course there's going to be adversity, and that's kind of like testing how much I want it.
There you go.
Um, and when that happens and I'm in that kind of stuck place, then it brings me down even more
Right,
and makes me have more doubt, more fear. And it's like
right,
the fear of failure too.
right.
Um,
So you're already aware of all of these things. So let's stay on that. What happens when you're afraid of failure in terms of, so is that something that you have a habit of staying in,
mhm.
for example, and mull, like go into that and, or, yeah, so maybe talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's the fear of failure comes. And when I mull it over, when I like don't move on to the next thing, and I'm like replaying the thing over and over. Oh, I could have done this. Oh, I regret not doing this, instead of just trying again and doing it differently.
Yeah,
And it's definitely ties back to perfectionism,
yeah,
wanting to be perfect, wanting, but which is funny because I I also understand myself as like I take a different path. Like, what is perfect? And I looked up the definition of perfect one time, and it means to make whole, and it has nothing to do with like external. And so it's one of those things where like when I think of perfect in the eyes of who, like if I fail, like I've always been a risk taker. I've always done it and I haven't really questioned it. But then when it comes to like my bigger dreams, I'm like, I'm so afraid of flopping. I'm so afraid of, um, you know, almost like having to turn to someone and be like, yeah, I failed.
yeah, yeah.
When it's really like, it's just, I understand it's a part of it. Like it's a part of like the whole
And
process.
first of all, thank you for sharing that level of detail. I mean, so I think that's really, first of all, great that you've realized a lot of those specific things that are holding you back. And the big theme for me is definitely external validation,
Yeah.
trusting of yourself, which you're already aware of. And so then the question is always, well, what do I do with that? And I want to give you a really, because we've just got a short session today, but I want to give you um, just a small example of something that's really helped me a lot, actually, because you have great capacity for big picture thinking. You can see it, you're feeling your vision, and the stuckness can often, and when I'm listening to your examples, can often be in the details,
Yes.
the day to day or perceived mundane. Feels
Mm.
boring. You said a couple of things like, is emptying the dishwasher of value to my greater vision? That's absolutely that has to happen. You have to empty the dishwasher. But one of the tools that I used, and I often used this actually in Nike, was everything's kind of like a game of chess. Have you ever played chess?
I have never played chess.
Right. It might be a good game to play, but you've played soccer, obviously, and other sports you can use. So I used sometimes sports analogies or sometimes chess. It's all the same thing. There's there's two main tools that we need. There's the big picture. So chess is a big picture game.
Hmm.
You're going for the checkmate. So each move that you make, and if you haven't played, this might be a challenging example, but if you think of it in terms of soccer, there's a whole lineup. You've got all the players, and the ultimate goal is what's the goal in soccer?
To win. To score a goal.
Right. Now, in order to score the goal, so actually let's walk through this. So in order to score that goal, what needs to happen?
In order to score a goal, a lot of movement on the field, a lot of communication
Right?
and confidence. Because that's the thing is like a goal can happen 1,000 different ways.
Yeah.
Um, and
So
so
great. So the energy, the communication, the teamwork, then
small
let's,
connections.
yes. So what happens before? So imagine the coach that's working with the team.
Mhm.
Let's talk about you're a specific position in soccer. Do you know where you're supposed to be on the field?
Yes.
Right. Why do you know? How do you know that?
Because that's what I want to play and that's my skill set. And that's the person and my coach, like, that's where he has placed me.
Right. And he's placed you there for a reason.
Yeah.
And you know why you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're a part of the overall team that's going to score the goal. So it's exactly the same in chess. So there's two things, and I use the chess and card game analogy. So chess is like the long play. And that comes very, it sounds like to me, and you can just reflect on this, but it sounds like you naturally have a vision. You're always big ideas and vision and energized by those things. Game of chess. So what's checkmate? Checkmate is scoring a goal for your team,
Mhm.
right? But before that goal is scored, you're moving a pawn and a bishop, but you're assessing the whole system, the whole game with another player. Right.
Mhm.
So you're really looking at, you know, the vision is to get their king, but actually there's lots of little moves. So that's the game of chess. Do you get where I'm going?
Yes.
Right. And then you've got like a card game, literally in the moment, a game of poker. You've got a certain group of cards, you're playing right there and then it's very in the moment and you don't show your hand. So the card game represents short-term detailed goals. The chess game is the systems thinking, the longer term. So in 1 year, Jenny wants to be doing this. You have a feeling, oh, I know I want to travel the world. I know I want to do this, 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 and this. But the stuckness comes between this and the bridge, the card game to the chess game, or the soccer game to whatever you want to empty in the dishwasher. There's analogies in everything.
Yeah.
So what I would, because we're just having a short session today, Jenny, and I want you just to reflect on those two things. There's the systems game, the game of chess, the soccer game, and the card game. And that's a tool that you can use every single day. You've actually got you've experienced success many times in your life. And the thing we talked about at the beginning was your desire. And it's okay to say that you have desires.
Mhm.
To translate a vision into reality.
Yeah.
So I heard two great examples from you about your capacity to do that. So just keep practicing. What was it in those two examples that made it happen? You've already got that capacity. So it's really shifting your story, the narrative.
Yeah.
Whenever that comes up, that negative voice won't go away. But it's the power of your experience becoming stronger. So you keep practicing, emptying the dishwasher is part of my vision, is a new narrative.
Yeah.
So does that feel true? I know that if you haven't played chess, it might be challenging, but is the soccer game something that can use the sports analogy?
Oh,
Is
of
that?
course.
Mhm.
Of course, because I also played center back, like center defense. So I saw the whole field. So I
Right.
could see how things would work. And then when it didn't, you're like almost like being ready for what you didn't anticipate, which is like obviously the other team or
Mhm.
someone on your team, like not whatever it is. And it's something that like here, it's about just putting it into action and being okay with failing. Because like I would get so like hurt if someone didn't understand where I was coming from, or I would take it personally, where it's really like, oh, okay, like I don't actually have anything to prove. Like this is something that I want, and so if I want it, just keep following like the next step that
Yes.
that feels right, like following my gut and working towards it, because it'll happen. But it's just if I have the pressure of it, instead of looking at it as like a game, or like as like a fun strategy, if I have the pressure of it, that's where I'm like, okay, I don't know how, it's going to get from point A to point B, but I'm not trying to get to point B, I'm trying to get to Z. And so there's like multiple ways to get to Z, so don't get
Great.
too stuck on A to B.
I love that. So we'll just finish off here on tell me what Z is for you right now. What is Z?
I feel it's hard to put down what Z is. I don't know what Z is.
Great. Great. That's the next step. When in your daily life, when you're emptying the dishwasher, that's your question right now. Because when there has to be some sense of what that Z is. Because even though you have the feeling of big vision and you're holding that space for a big vision, if the Z isn't clear, then it's wandering around in what is this?
Yeah.
So coming back to the game of soccer, what's that first step? What's the first step that you need to take? And be really clear what that is. So a specific example might be every day I'm going to journal 20 things that Jenny is amazing at.
Okay.
And every day you keep doing it until you start to see patterns. Because patterns require focus and discipline. And you'll build up trust over time. So for example, when you're writing those 20 things, I found it very, very challenging to journal actually because of the amount of focus it took and to read. So that can be let's say the dark side of big vision.
Yeah.
Attention to details.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest, Jenny, is practice that attention to detail 100% on yourself.
Okay.
So, and if you're up for it, I would love, because this is just I know you're off to Kenya and this is just a short session. Every day, send me one, even if I know the internet might not be working, one small sentence
Okay.
of what Jenny is amazing at.
Okay.
Yeah. And the second sentence, what you want. And if it's not clear, it's fine.
Okay.
You think you can commit to that?
I can. I will do it.
Not easy.
Yeah, I've been doing like for the 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks in March, I was doing gratitude lists every night before bed. Just like what was I grateful for that day? So kind of translating it. I think sometimes even gratitude my focus can be outward.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm grateful that I had lunch with this person today or whatever it is. But coming back to myself, like, what am I amazing at? Because I think where I've like found even the stuckness is like, I like negate like everything that I've done because I'm like, it's not good enough to where I want to still be.
Great.
And so kind of recognizing, okay, like I have this and I always have this. I will see that. I think I'll find the value in sending that to you every day.
Yeah. For yourself, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. And finishing off, Jenny, so tell me, First of all, so we didn't have time to focus on both today. I think we'll just have a short session and you're off to Africa tomorrow. So we talked about your desire was to find ways to translate a vision into reality.
Mm-hmm.
So did you get a sense of even a next step on that today?
Yes. Even it's more, and I think the two things that we were going to discuss is like, it comes back to that. It's like, if I keep coming back to my vision, even with the little things, and know like my why and like what I'm doing things for, rather than, oh, this isn't a part of it, and trying to decide like these little moments that are like, oh, this isn't a part of it, but kind of just stepping into whatever's presenting itself to me, and like having the mindset of like, oh, I'm doing this for this bigger vision, and this is what needs to get done right now in order to get to this end goal.
Yeah, well, I want to say thank you. I think you did a really amazing job today, and you went very deep very quickly.
Yeah, thank you, Colette, too, because I think with coaching sessions, like I haven't done a lot of coaching sessions like this before, and it's really helpful to have like someone reflect back to me where I'm at, because sometimes I get very stuck in my head sometimes. And so to be able to like speak to someone, then have them speak back and be like, okay, it was just a really gentle like guidance throughout the coaching session. So I really appreciate it.
You really opened up a lot, and I think trust yourself would be my biggest message from today. You've got absolutely everything that you need, and it's about practicing the details. Trust yourself, and then practice the things that you're like, it's so hard to focus, or those are the things to practice more of. Yeah, and you got it. And have a wonderful time in Africa, coming back out to have an incredible time. And stay in touch, and let's stay connected, and we'll connect once you're back.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Colette.
Thanks. Talk to you soon. Bye.